Please welcome Terry Crews.
Thank you for having me. My God, every time I see that spot, so much emotion. Oh, man. What can I say? What can I say? Toxic masculinity. You know, a lot of people believe that it doesn't exist. It's been a buzzword. It's been one of those things where, like, you know, you hear it so much that it kind of loses its effect. But I'm gonna be real with you guys. Listen, first of all, I know I got on a suit, but I'm gonna keep it so real. We're gonna get real for this 15 minutes. I just wanna tell you what toxic masculinity did to me and how I was a part of it. First of all, I was raised by toxic masculinity. My earliest memory, literally, I probably was around 4 or 5. One of the most vivid memories I've ever had is watching my father punch my mother in the face as hard as he could. And all I could think about when I saw her crumple to the floor was, okay, he says he loves her. Like, what would he do to me? And so I got a lesson. I got a real quick lesson in how the rules go down, okay? Might makes right, all right? And one thing that blew me away is that as I grew older, I started to realize, wait a minute, first of all, in this world of toxic masculinity, when you watch your mother being terrorized and being intimidated and being beaten, you start to realize, okay, wait a minute. First of all, if you can't beat them, you gotta join them, okay? Then I realized, me, Terry Crews, I realized and thought in my head that I was more valuable than women simply because I was a man. Because everything in my life growing up told me that. You gotta understand, I'm from the hood. I'm from Flint, Michigan. Okay? And things that were told to me, and my first experiences growing up as a young man, probably 12, 13 years old, was like, hey man, you gotta have game. You gotta have game with the women. You have to tell them. You lie to them. In fact, you have people tell you, hey, I had older men tell me, hey man, look, you give a girl 2 good weeks, she'll spend 3 years chasing those 2 good weeks. Pimp mentality was all a part of my young culture, where it was like you weren't even a man until you slept with at least 10 women. Used them, abused them, and threw them away. Lie to them, tell them that you love them, and walk away. You have to understand, because a lot of times, people don't believe it gets that real. But I'm trying to tell you, I was instructed in this. And I was like, but I like her. And they were like, no, you are weak. You do not love this girl. Do not even show your love. In fact, you lie to them, keep them off balance, make them think you love them, and then never talk to them for another 2 weeks or whatever, and make them flip out on you. And they'll always be wondering, are they good? Are they with you or not? And I was like, holy cow. Even when I was young, I knew this was wrong. But this was the way it was. Then it was the rules of strength. It was the rules of like, okay, look, whoever was the bully I remember walking to school and it was like whoever was the gang member, whoever was the drug dealer, you ruled the house, you ruled everything. So the thing was, I had to get strong and I had to get stronger than you. And the rules in this toxic game is literally the bench press. It's ridiculous. It's kind of like determining whoever gets to run everything. If you bench press the most, you get to run the world. But the ridiculous part about that is that most of these people aren't smart. So the problem is, you have a bunch of idiots who are very, very strong, determining what goes on. And I'm here to tell you that I was that idiot. I'm guilty. Terry Crews is guilty. Let me tell you, the day I realized what toxic masculinity was in my life was the day my wife walked out. Because I had the strength. I was the man. I had bought in. I was like, first of all, I did it all. I played in the NFL. You know what? I've been in fights. My wife watched me throw people over her head. I had nothing to prove. I have been successful in films and television and movies, had done all this stuff. Very successful. I made the money. And you have to understand, in the world of toxic masculinity, it is all about you versus something. It creates enemies. First of all, the woman in your life becomes an enemy. She's someone that just wants to keep you from something. And it's rich versus poor. It becomes white versus black. It becomes male versus female. And in those rules, listen, if you win, I lose. So you never get your way. It must be my way. I was like this with my wife. I was like this with my kids. I was like this. If it was not my way, it was the highway. But the thing is that love doesn't work that way. And I was in this thing where I needed to control my life. And that's the rules of toxic masculinity. The rules are control your girl. Hey, man, people would tell me, you better control your wife, man. You better control your kids. You better control you dominate. You make sure but you cannot dominate people. And the one thing that broke me down, and I realized, wait a minute, it is impossible to love someone and control them at the same time. You can't do it. And my wife had enough. She literally walked out. Let me tell you, with this mentality that I had developed an addiction to pornography. Years earlier, I was unfaithful, and I never told her. I vowed I would never say anything. Because again, the rules of toxic masculinity was the image. As long as my image is good, I'm good. But what happens is you're propped up, you're stacking bricks on top of two spindly little bamboo sticks that has nothing underneath it. And dangerously, as you keep stacking more and more on there, it's going to fall. And you're watching the fall of many, many, many abusive people right now. And what happened with me is when she left, let me tell you, you know what's so crazy with toxic masculinity thing is that you are like, okay, bye. You know what, go. I don't need you. This was my attitude, I'm trying to tell you. And I was sitting here and I was like, you know what, you can go. You know what, that'd be like 4 women to take your place. And all of a sudden, there was just this little voice. It was this little thing. It said, maybe it's you, Terry. I was like, no, it couldn't be me. I'm successful. I'm strong. I got the strongest bench press. I got the money. Okay, I'm successful. Everybody thinks I'm great. But I knew I wasn't great. I knew I was less than great. I knew I wasn't who I needed to be. I knew I wasn't a real man. And you know what? During that time alone, when she walked out, I literally had a moment of introspection. And you have to understand, introspection is very, very dangerous to the toxic masculine mindset. Because you are forced to sit and think about why you think the way you do. And I was alone. And I didn't have anybody tell me that, no, man, you good, man, forget her, man, let's go out, let's hang out. I was by myself. And every day I was by myself, I saw more and more wrong with me. And I saw it was me. And I knew I had to change. I knew I had to change. And let me tell you, what's wild about this, then thank God, thank God, thank God, I did not lose my family. But I very well could have easily. It could have been that way, but I went to rehab, I went to therapy, I started to understand what made me tick, and I apologized. And also I took accountability for who I was. I had to make amends. It's not enough to just say you're sorry. It's like hitting somebody with the car, and all of a sudden, they're laying on the street, you get out of the car, you say, oh man, I'm sorry, my bad, and get back in the car and ride off. Tell you something, that's a hit and run. It's not an apology. Listen to me. A lot of these apologies out here are hit and runs. That's what they are. You gotta call them for what they are. Accountability says you stay with the victim. Accountability says you wait for the police to show up. Accountability says you lose your license for a year. Accountability says you pay the fines. Accountability is something that we cannot afford to lose. We cannot let that go. And let me tell you, and once you've been in this world, you start to recognize it all around. And I recognized it in 2017, February, when this agent basically molests me at a party with my wife. We know what toxic masculinity is at this time. And we could not believe, this man walks up to me, gropes me in my genitals in front of everybody. I push him back, grab him, get off of me, man. What a lot of people feel like I just let it happen. This is another thing that toxic men like to say. You let that happen. As if, first of all, they would rather me kill this man than admit it happened. Than me say what happened to me. Than me tell my story. And let me tell you, I spent a year dealing with this thing publicly, simply because, as you saw in this video, this thing is about all of us. All of us. And when the Weinstein story broke, and these women were coming forward with their stories, and I was like, I know what that is. I know what that is. And men were everywhere, were coming out of the blue saying, they're opportunists, they're liars, they're hoes. I couldn't stay silent because I knew. I said, that happened to me. This is all of us. This is all of us. And I'm here to tell you right now that, first of all, one thing I know is that, and I'm generalizing, but this is all I have is general knowledge. I don't know everything, okay? But the whole thing I know is that men tend to be manipulated by pride. Men tend to be manipulated that way. It's like, I bet you won't jump off the stage, and the guy will be like, I bet you I will, and he'll do it, and he'll break his head. This is the way it goes, okay? If you ever see a bar fight, it goes off pride, because if nobody was there, they stop fighting and go home. It's all about everybody else. It's about the image, it's the pride. It's like, you ain't gonna, I'm gonna show you. But women, what I've noticed in my life, tend to be manipulated by fear. My father used to keep my mother intimidated. What was he gonna do? What was he gonna say? And it kept her in line, it kept her in control. And I'm gonna tell you, this is a theory. This is my theory for solution. A solution that I have been working in my life and have been very, very vocal about. Men need to be vulnerable. We need to talk. Men need to share. Because the pride is like, hey man, you can't jump off that stage. You say, you know what, I can't. I'll hurt myself. That's very vulnerable. But on the other side, women need to be fearless, like my wife. My wife faced the fact that she might be alone for the rest of her life, and she didn't care. She was fearless, and it saved us all. Guys, it's all of us together, and we will not stop. I'm trying to tell you, it's a sea change. There's no putting this thing back in the bottle. It's like the Emancipation Proclamation, guys. You will never see a time like this on earth. You be proud because you're here and you're in it, and we're in it together. I love you guys. Thank you so much. God bless you.